Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. My name is Ted Samaras. I'm an instructional technology coach from Franklin Township in central New Jersey. All right, so we are going to be talking about protecting your original data today and how to use things like import and query and VLOOKUP to kind of look through. This is going to be a great overview that we are going to be doing today. So I don't want you to be intimidated. I don't want you to feel like you have to memorize each one of these formulas. This pre-recorded broadcast will be available to you, and also you can contact me at any time. So without further ado, let's jump into the spreadsheet and get going. Okay, so now we're looking here at our spreadsheet here, and I know you're here to learn about what to do when you have a big mess of data like this, right? This is one of these questions that I revisit in my own head over and over and over again, not only at work, but also in other things that I do with Google, with Apple, with NASA, going to the market, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about importing data and query functions. I'm also going to show you a little bit about VLOOKUP at the end, just so that this way you can kind of get a look at that as well. So we are going to be following our tabs along the bottom here just to kind of show you what we've got. And so you can see here, as I scroll from left to right, I have lots and lots and lots of data, all the way out to column DR. Not for the Dominican Republic, just because that's where my data stopped for this. You are also going to look up and down, and you're going to notice if I just keep scrolling and keep scrolling and keep scrolling, I will have something like over 2,000 lines of data. So what's nice is that I can actually manipulate this data a lot easier than just getting it all. And realistically, when you have the opportunity to collect data, collect it. I'm not trying to sound like any country's government official or anything like that. The reason why I say that is because sometimes with your end user, right, you only get them once. And so if you're asking for feedback or you're asking for student feedback, and there's an extra question you might want to ask it. Worst comes to worst, if you don't use that data, you don't use that data. You also want to be careful on the other side of, especially if you're using the Google form, not making it too many sections or too many questions. So I know there's always that balance, but maybe if there's one or two extra questions that you're not sure if you want to ask, go ahead and ask them. And then you can always decide if you want to use that data later on. Okay, so what I've done is here, I've actually have this raw data on another sheet somewhere. Okay, and I've imported the range, and what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to show you here in the second tab that this data is actually the same as this data, which is the same as data elsewhere. And so what I'm doing is I'm pulling it here. The only thing I've done is change the colors here so you could see here that how it gets pulled. All right, but if I come up to the top here, you're going to say, well, how did you pull all that data from one workbook to another? Okay, so if I just kind of zoom in on here, right, you're going to see here that I started with a function, right, for, equals import range. And what I'm doing is when I open it up, right, some people like to use the whole website. Other people like to start after the slash of this D here. And what it does is it allows you to pull the website that it's coming from. And then you're going to have that in quotes. You're going to have a comma. And then you're going to quote here again, and you're going to have here on the tab that you're going to want to do. So I'm pulling this from a tab called Raw Data, and I am pulling it all the way from cell A1 all the way down to DR 2223. Okay, and what that does is it pulls all that data over from that particular sheet to here. Now you might say to me, why do you want to do that? There's a couple of reasons, right? One, I don't want to touch the original data that's there. Having done the corporate thing and then the educational thing, I have run into my share, and I actually learned my lesson more in corporate when I first started, of not touching the original data when possible, because what happens is that inevitably, if you happen to mess something up, for lack of a better term, and you don't know how to undo it, or you've gone to, and I know there's revision history and all that, but if you can avoid it, that's a great way to avoid it by pulling this data over. The other thing is that a lot of times, like when you're doing conditional formatting, they may only apply to that tab. And so when you're doing conditional formatting, you want to be able to pull it into that same like workbook. So it makes it a lot easier to do than going back to multiple workbooks and then seeing your conditional formatting didn't kick out, et cetera, et cetera. All right. But again, you have all this data here, but maybe you don't need all this data, right? Maybe you only want a section of this data. So if we move to our next tab, you will see here that I have an import range starting out the same way with my URL, and I've opened up right equals import range, opened my parentheses up. Okay. And what I've done is I've come all the way to here. I've done my comma. So this is the exact same beginning, the exact same website that I'm pulling it from. Okay. But then what I'm doing is I am here. Let me go back. I am here with I opened up my quotation marks, and I'm talking about the tab, but you will notice that I want to start here in our column AZ, column 1, and I want to go to BF 2223. So I don't want anything to come over before AZ. So those first was that 26, 51. So 51 columns I don't need. Right? I need column 52, 53, 54, 50, etc. until maybe column 56 or 57. And anything to the right, I don't need as well. Okay, so I'm not even going to pull that stuff. So all I want to pull is this information here. And what I'm doing is I'm putting that formula in my cell A1 again. Okay, and when I pull that information, you will see that this looks a lot more manageable than it did before. In that other data one, I've got random ones in. I've got stuff from Philadelphia teams and from ISTE. I've got presidents and dinosaurs and all kinds of crazy stuff in there. But here, this is allowing me to just focus on the data that I need. And because I'm presenting here, yes, it's going to go global, I'm sure, there'll be different people looking at it, but for the sake of this particular presentation, the fine people of SPARCC have invited me to present. So I want to focus on the great state of Ohio, and you will see here that this information talks about counties in Ohio, it talks about cities in Ohio, years incorporated, etc., etc. And this is the whole bucket list that I've got right here, coming from the government website. Okay, and I've highlighted that here so you could see it. It is from the Secretary of State here in Ohio. Okay, so this is the information that I really want to use. So again, this is a nice way of importing from a much bigger sheet information that you want to use. What I can also do is I can also import multiple sheets onto one sheet. Okay, and we did this for a competition where we had two different Google Forms, and we wanted to pull the information together in one so everybody could see all the data together. But it wasn't necessary that the columns lined up in terms of the users. So they did one scoring based on the presentation, another scoring based on the actual materials that were presented. And so you can do that here too with any Google Forms. So here in A1, I have taken import range and I've opened it up, and I am pulling the first 6 columns here of this particular area. And then what I'm doing is I can also come here to column I, cell I1, and I can put another import range into the same sheet. And so now what I've done is that I have pulled information here from 2 different Google Sheets, or a same sheet, just different sections, into these particular cells so I can have it multiple. So this is something to consider as well if you want to do that, if you want to import multiple sections of data into one spreadsheet, so this way you can manipulate it easier. All right, so that gives you a little background in terms of importing data, importing range. Again, when you realize you have a need for any of these things, you're going to have this resource to look back to, or other resources that I've got, and you're going to say, okay, this is what he was talking about. This is how this is going to make my life this much easier. Don't create a mega spreadsheet for yourself just to be doing this, because I'm sure if you're watching this video, there's a good chance that either through work or through personal, you have a lot of data lying around somewhere. And so importing range and importing data are going to be one thing that you want to look at. The next topic, as we follow along here on our tabs at the bottom, okay, has to do with the query. Look at our query function. We are going to see here that we're going to come back up here to A1. Okay, and I'm just going to zoom in on that a little bit. All right, and you're going to see here that I'm going to open it up with equals and query, right? Because that's the function. Now I'm going to open my parentheses up. I am going to talk about here the tab that I want to get my information from. So here I'm getting it from import raw data. So that's why it's got the single quote instead of the double quote there. And I want to look in anywhere from A1 all the way through DR again, right? 2300 or whatever I had there. I want to look through all that data. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to select certain columns. Okay, now if I just wanted to select everything, right, which sometimes people want to do, I would use like the wildcard, like the asterisk. Okay, but here I want to get specific columns. So this is another way of doing this, the same way that, a similar way to how I import the range for only a section. So I want to select here what is in columns AZ, BA, BB, etc., all the way to BF. Okay, so this is another way to pull like limited columns so that this way you get the data you need. Okay, what's also nice about this is that if you're sharing this data, if somebody goes in and types, what's going to happen is that like if you go ahead and you just type in over something, you see here everything disappears. The reason is because in a query function, okay, it is pulling the data over and it's going to show you the data from that other sheet. Once I start typing in this sheet, it wipes out everything else and I get a message up here in my ref telling me that the array or the data wasn't expanded because it would overwrite what I just typed in here. Right? So there are ways to get around that. We do this sometimes with our repair log for our 8,000 Chromebooks that we have in our district, 8,000 new Chromebooks plus all the old inventory. But what you run into, one issue you might run into is that this information here is considered dynamic, right? Meaning that, you know, it changes based on something changing on another sheet. Whereas I can also have like a spot for people to type in, but that would be static data if I'm doing it right on this sheet, and I can maybe put it to the right here. So anyway, so just something to keep in mind if you are using this. But again, just for pulling data, this particular query function actually works out really well as a nice way to start, where I'm basically got, again, that same information of county, city, year incorporated, etc. Okay, if I kick over here to query, again, for the next tab, which is the query of Ohio, but now I want to include something about 1876. Okay, so what you'll see is you'll see the same type of data, right? I'm looking for the same, right, county, city, name, form of government, year incorporated, etc. But I'm like, okay, I don't want to worry about every you know, town or city or anything like that in Ohio right now. I need to really get my search down to where I want to only look at like certain years of incorporation. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll come here and I'll start out with the same formula, right? Equals query. And again, one quick thing here too, people say, what's query? Well, you're asking a question, like what's your query? It's another term for it, right? What's your question? So I am looking for here anything that's on the import raw data tab that we looked at earlier in any cells that have data. I want to select here AZ, BA, all the way, so the same columns, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to say where, and that's going to tell the system here, oh, I need to look for something. Where is one of the things that tells me to look for it. Where in column BC on that original data, okay, I am going to look for 1876. All right, so I know that BC back on that original data is the same BC here. And so what BC is, it is my year of incorporation. Okay, and just to zoom back out a second, and just to prove that out, if I come back here all the way to the beginning and I scroll all the way here to BC, I see here that this is my year of incorporation. Okay, so that's where I'm getting that information from. So I come here, I put that in, and I want to select all the data that's in these particular columns where the year of incorporation is 1876, otherwise known as the centennial for the United States, right? And what I do is I realize that I have all of these cities, okay? And I've just pulled them in the same order that they were in before. Okay, this is the order that I had my data in, so I didn't alphabetize anything and all that. And we could talk about that in a little bit. But basically what I've done is all these cities have been incorporated in the state of Ohio in 1876. And then with that, I pull their census data as well from 2000, 2010, 2020. Okay, now what I can also do is, and this gets to another question here. All right, you'll see here that this is the same exact data. Okay, the same exact data here, and I'll show you in the formula, right? I'm pulling from the same spot. I'm selecting the same columns, but we'll go back to this in a second. Okay, and I'm looking for the same attributes, right? Where BC is equal to 1876. All right, but you will notice something here. I am selecting column BC first, then AZ, then BA, BB, BD, BE, and BF. Okay, so what am I doing? I am taking those columns and I am moving them out of order, because since I am searching for 1876, and that is my primary goal here, I may want to put that data on the left-hand side and say, okay, this is everything from 1876, and now give me the rest of the data. Okay, so now I'm hoping that somebody out there, and it's probably more than one of you watching this broadcast, right, is saying to yourself, oh my goodness, I can actually take all of that mega data that I had at the beginning and I can sort the columns in a different order. Yes, you can. Let me say that again. Yes, you can. Okay. And what's awesome about that is that I know that, again, if you're looking at this, there's a good chance that you have done a Google form before and you have asked questions and your data has come out and you wish that, I don't really need this data, but I want this to go at the beginning for this report, but on another report, I want the last names and the first names, but they're asked in a different order on the Google form. Or I want the student ID number first, then I want the last name, then I want what period it is. However you want to do it, you want to be able to organize that same set of data, right, in different ways. And so this is what's nice about using first import range, right, and then the query function, because what I'm doing is that I'm looking at the sheet where the Google form is, and I am basically pulling out all of this information, but I can reorder these columns here, and so I'm getting the data the way I want to look at it. Okay, right? One big company, right, does have it your way, right? That type of thing. So this is your data, have it your way, right? And if they want to send me a royalty, great. If they want to sue me for using that line, I don't have an address as far as they're concerned. Okay, so anyway, I have pulled my data again here, but my year incorporated has gone first. So hopefully, if nothing else, that aha moment lets you know that you can do this. Okay, and again, with any of this stuff, if you have questions, you can always contact me. I've got my contact information up at the beginning, at the end, in the middle, that type of thing. Okay, so now I'm going to go to my next tab, and we're still talking about query function. Now you say to me, Ted, this is great. I can pull by 1876, but being that I am from Stark County, because I am local to this conference, I say, I really only want to know, hey, are there any cities that were incorporated in 1876 that are in Stark County? And yes, you can do that. So I'm looking here at my query function again, pulling from the same spot. I am selecting here just my standard columns in the standard order. Again, I can mix them up like we just talked about. I have my where. BC is 1876. So this looks a lot like the formula we used 2 tabs ago, because it is. The only difference is that I have added the word and. And then I have said and AZ, which is where the counties are listed on my main data, equals Stark. And so now, excuse me, I am looking for data where the year of incorporation is 1876 and the county is Stark. Again, I have here 1876 and I'm looking for Stark. And if it sounds like I got a little choked up there, it is because when you start using data like this, right, and you realize the power you have and you say to yourself, oh my goodness, I can actually do this. I don't have to be, a rocket scientist or anything like that, or I don't need to be, writing all the code for Google in the world. When you realize that you can have data that's meaningful to you and you can pull it just by realizing that, oh, if I put and in this formula, that it's going to allow me to pull this. It's pretty exciting. I try to tell people it's like a painter who has a blank canvas, right? At first, you are intimidated by that blank canvas, and you're like, because you want to try to paint everything, right? You want to try to paint Renoir, Modigliani, Van Gogh, Monet, Matisse, everything else, and be Bob Ross all at the same time. And you realize that, with that blank canvas, it really should be you. You might have all those influences, but it really should be you. And so now I'm at the point where when I look at a blank spreadsheet, same thing. I get excited because I know I can kind of put my personality or my personal twist into it. So anyway, getting back to the great people of Stark County here in Ohio, I want to know what cities were incorporated in the county of Stark in 1876. And as I come here, I see, one, that the city of Minerva, which belongs in Stark County now, maybe not then, but now, was incorporated in the year 1876, and I can take a look at their census data as well based on that. Okay, so now I have really narrowed down. When you think about where we started with all that great data, and now we think about how much we've been able to narrow it down, just by using the query function, it's actually pretty awesome. Okay, so now I might say to myself here, okay, I want to use query function again, and now I'm really geeked out because I can really look at the data in Stark County, okay? So what I want to do is I want to pull from the same data here, okay? And I want to say to myself, okay, I want to select what is in column BA, or what is the city name, okay, where AZ, which is the county names, are Stark, and I want to order it by BF and do it descending, okay? So what I'm doing is that I'm basically taking data from one column based off another. Boom, mind blown. Wait a minute, I don't have to have that data even show here. No, you don't. You can have it where you pull data, you are displaying the data on one, BA, based on the data of another. Okay, so if I was just to select BA, I would get all the city names. But I am making it where I have got the data in BA where it is only Stark in AZ. And then on top of it, I am going to order it by BF, or the census data in, I believe, 2020, descending, meaning that the greatest is going to be at the top and the lowest is going to be at the bottom. But I don't need all that data to show. I just need clean data here to be able to show the cities in order. Now, I went back, I checked this, right? This kind of all makes sense when you look at it. When I look here, I see Stark County here, right? And I see that based on my formula, that Canton, right, will fit this criteria. I come back to A1, again, BA, city name, where Canton is in Stark County, so I pulled correctly. And because Canton has the greatest population in Stark County based on the information I got from the Secretary of State in Ohio, it will go first. And again, I can show all the data to prove where I've got it, or maybe I just want this list just to discuss it. And as I go down here, I see here, other places, okay, in Stark County. And as I come down here further and further and further, I see here, oh, here's Minerva, right? This is the one that we talked about before that was incorporated in 1876, right? It's kind of middle of the road in terms of the census, right? In terms of the population. But again, it is part of Stark County. and it is descending from highest population to lowest population. So here I can really start to get the data to sing the way I want it to, right? And again, I don't have to show any of it. So for some of you who are like, I just need this report, I just need to show the information of, you know, what's here. My students get confused when I have too much data out there. I want to just have this list. My boss gets confused when I have too much data out here. I just want this list. I get confused when I have too much data here. I just want this list. And so you can do that. If you'd like to show where that data came from, right, you can certainly do that too. So what I would do is I would come here, and like you can see here on my formula, I'm adding here, right, AZ. So comma AZ, right? And now I am pulling here city name, and my double check is, okay, here it is. They're all Stark County, okay? If I want to go ahead and come back up here and adjust that formula. So I show here BA, but I also show BF to show what I'm showing the highest to lowest from. I come here, and now I have my city name, and just that easy, I have here the 2020 census data also, so I can see numbers to now back up the list that I've provided. So Canton, 70,000 people. Plain, 53,000, Jackson 43,000, etc., all the way down to where I come here to Hills and Dales. And again, this is the list. If you have questions about the data, feel free to contact your Secretary of State in Ohio. I'm sure they don't have too much to do ahead of the 2024 election. And if you believe that in the state of Ohio, I have a lot of bridges to sell you. But anyway, you can see here that the data comes all the way down. So just that easy, you can adjust your formula to pull the data that you want. Okay. Again, I will leave that alone, right? And again, I have shown you here through descending population 2020. Before we go, there are a couple of other things I want to show you because, again, the focus of this was first the import data, so you're not touching that original data, then the query data, so this way you're not touching that original data, and you are manipulating it to what you need to use it for. Okay, VLOOKUP. What's nice about VLOOKUP, okay, it's another way to pull it. Okay, there's VLOOKUP, there's HLOOKUP, there's XLOOKUP, there's all kinds of lookups, right? But when you're first starting this, okay, you're going to have here VLOOKUP. So what you're going to do is you're going to have here like a heading. And what I've done is here, I have actually in data validation just made this a drop down where I have here all of the cities here in Ohio. Okay. And so I picked North Royalton just as an example. Okay. And I have here my formula. Okay, and again, don't feel like you have to remember this. If you take anything else out of here, I want you to play with query function. But I just want you to know you can have this as well. So what I'm doing is I am doing a VLOOKUP here where based on, and we'll talk about this if error in a second, so don't worry about that. Just focus on the parentheses here. Okay, I have here my VLOOKUP formula where when I open my parentheses, I am going to look here in cell A2. And I am looking for the value of A2 or North Royalton back here in my imported raw data where I want to look in basically these columns. Okay, and so the strings allow me to go up and down. The dollar signs here allow me to go up and down through those searches. Okay, so basically I am looking here in BA all the way to BF. And I am looking here for the third column of data. So the third column of data there, BA, B, and BC, if you remember before, BC was what we were searching for date of incorporated by. So this is how I can find my date of incorporated here. Okay, so it was the third column in this data, so our column BC. And where it has North Royalton, it is going, in BA, it's going to look up in BC, the date of incorporation. Okay, I don't want to get too hung up on this other stuff here, but if I didn't have this if error here and this blank here on the back end of it, it would basically show up when I don't have anything in here. It would show up as one of those NA type of things, you know, where you have the number sign. It says N/A, and you know some people don't like that from an aesthetic quality. This if error is how you could take that out. But again, don't get hung up on that. All right. If I come over here to C2. You're going to see here I have the same exact formula. The only difference is I am looking in column 4 or column BD, and I am looking for the 2010 census. And then in D, I'm looking in column 5 for the 2020 census. So what this does is once I have set this up, I can come here. And again, it's not alphabetical because I just pulled this data randomly. But like here, if I look at Highland Heights, I can click this in my data validation, and it tells me here based off my main data that the data was incorporated was 1921, my census, and my census. For those of you looking globally and want to know more about the big cities, like some of the bigger cities, right, I can look here in Cleveland, and I can find that. I can look in Columbus, and I can find that. Right, I can start typing in Cincinnati, and I can find that. So for those of you who are looking for some of the bigger cities, I could see when they were incorporated and also what their census data was for 2010 and 2020. That easy by doing the VLOOKUP, as opposed to having to go to back and forth into that original data and copy and paste. All right. The final thing I want to show you is that you see how we're pulling this data from data validation, and we have here the data that we want to look for as it carries through. Okay. You can also set it up, okay, where you have it set up like a workbook. And if you go to my website, my www.ourtechcoach.com website, and you click on the spot that says Recruit Helpers, it is actually a college database for men's soccer. It's dated now by a couple of years because I did it for a project for my Google Innovator project, but I'd be happy to have volunteers who want to look up the head coaches of Division 1, 2, 3, and NAIA schools around the country and help me fill that data back in updated. But the structure is there, and you have here where you can pull the city. Okay, so if I look here for Nelsonville, I can find also here the same kind of data using the same type of formulas. The only difference is that my format is set up like this. Okay, where I can have all my data here, and then I can take notes. Right, so like I can put here, the date, like, contacted coach. Or if you're taking notes on, I went to I visited this city over the summer for your students. So on this date, I went to the local library. On this date, I went to the local coffee shop. On this date, I walked in the park, that type of thing. It's a nice kind of way of doing journaling by doing that. All of this is free type here. The only things that I have formulas on are the same formulas that we discussed, where they are going back and they're VLOOKing up based on here, whatever is in cell B2. Okay, so again, I show you this because this can be a whole project in itself, just talking about VLOOKUP or or query or import range. But I just wanted to get this out there to you to show you that there are ways of manipulating data for yourself, okay, that won't be as intimidating once you start using it. And again, the formulas, you may say, oh my goodness, I can't remember all these. That's all right. What I want you to do is I want you to think about starting to have a database of different projects, right, that you do. And you say to you, because I don't remember all these formulas off the top of my head either, right? Some I do, some I don't, some I don't use for 6 months, right? Some I use like when we're at the beginning of the year when we're building our repair log, right? But then other ones like I may not use for 6 months until we are trying to get data out of it. And it's more a matter of knowing where to get these formulas from in the work that you already do. If you do that, you don't get to get hung up on memorizing everything, right? Sure, it makes it quicker if you remember it, but if you know where you could pull that formula from, you can always copy it from one of the other projects you did and then just modify it to what you need to do. But anyway, so I want you to think of this as an overview, and I do hope you think this was helpful in terms of that, where we were able to take a journey through all this type of data, starting out with a spreadsheet that looked like this, okay, with random numbers and random data and vegan restaurants and what kind of stuff to pick up at a convention and all that kind of stuff, and got really down to where we were able to find out, okay, what cities were incorporated in Stark County in 1876. So you went from all this data down to that kind of data just to get you what you needed. All right. So, with that, I want to thank you very much for your time today. I'll be posting my contact information at the end of this presentation as well, so you can hit pause and you can look it up there. But verbally, I will tell you that the easiest way you can do it is if you go to my website, www.ourtechcoach.com. You can find links to the email. You can find links to my Twitter account, my LinkedIn account, all that kind of good stuff too. I don't do this just because I like to hear myself talk. In fact, I actually get tired of listening to myself talk, even when it's just in my head. So I am doing this for you. So any feedback that you have, I appreciate it. Any questions that you have, again, I always appreciate that as well. I'll be happy to work with you, when you are ready to do this. So again, thank you very much for your time. Thank you also to the great people, Eric Kurtz and everybody else who puts on this presentation for SPARCC each year and invites me to do this pre-recorded session. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate getting to work with all of you. So thank you again for your time and have a wonderful day.